Welcome to another one of these. I've got a guest for once that you don't recognise because he's young, clean looking, opposed to the two dishevelled monsters that I have with me on the Three Amigos show. This is David, or Davo if you're watching him locally, because you have to put an O on the absolutely end of bloody everything. So we're going to have a chat. He's from the Grumpy Old Spurs podcast. I'm going to put a link to their show in the bio because that's the right thing to do. So how are you on this fine day?
Well, I'm really well. Thank you very much for having me on, and thank you for having me on at a time where I can have a glass of a gin and tonic. And because normally the shows that we normally do is first thing in the morning, and it's not the 90s anymore where I'll be drinking beer at like 6 in the morning on a weekend or anything like that. I am a responsible father sometimes, so it's very nice to be on. Thank you very much, and I feel like that and we'll get into this. I'm like in the middle of a diplomatic maelstrom of the country that I've made my home, Australia, and the country that I grew up in, and Tottenham. So I think we could be getting to a diplomatic incident sooner rather than later, but we'll get to that, won't we?
So just for my view, as opposed to yours,
Sure.
who probably know your shoe size and your favourite colour. Am I right that there is within that North London twang, there's an Australian twang and maybe something else? Are you on the run? Is that what the deal is?
I am on the run. Yes. So I have to watch this. I have a naturally monotonal voice. So at least I was on the Spurs show this week, and at least two people have said to me that they fell asleep listening to me on the Spurs show this week, which is kind. And so my naturally monotonal voice, and obviously the Australian accent, is always as if you're asking a question at the end of every sentence. So when I go back to the UK, friends and family think I've got a twang, and then when I'm over here, people like to do a Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins impersonation, or to bring it more up to date for the cool kids that no doubt watch the show. If you remember Don Cheadle in Ocean's 11 and 12, and that English accent that he put on. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So we won't. I don't need to go into the old bamboo because only 3% of the viewers are going to remember that. But
correct.
Yeah, it's a Don Cheadle masterclass. And listen, if it doesn't work out for you, there are always openings in the shipping forecast business.
Well, hopefully,
so
yes.
You could just effortlessly slide into that without any problem. So what's the situation with? Because I mean, the story of our lifetime is Tottenham,
yes.
and this master bleep with Postecoglou. Is it indelicate to ask you, given your? I mean, where do you stand on the subject of the great, big, wide, and worthy individual that we have in charge of our team at the moment?
Well, I've got conflicting emotions here, obviously. And so it's a couple of, if I can use some crap metaphors. So it's like when Tom Cruise was married to Nicole Kidman, and Tom dumped Nicole, and then Australia declared war on Tom and the Church of Scientology. If you remember that unfortunate incident with the Australian shock DJs who rang up that nurse to get through to Princess Catherine, and the unfortunate thing. Remember that the consequences there, and then of course there was the British Advertising Board who banned that Australian advert where it said "Where the bloody hell are you?" So it's kind of where that's kind of So what my situation is this. So first of all, I was delighted that the first ever Australian coach in the Premier League, so Australia, a country that I've made my home, and the club that I love and my family have been going to since 1938. So it's like a perfect marriage for at least 10 games. And so everyone was like, so that was great, yeah. And then you got the Robbie Williams, who anyone who watches Lads of Tottenham or Cheese knows I'm a huge fan of the work of Robbie Williams, the chicken in a basket Tom Jones of the 90s. And so it was all going well. And I'll take you to the moment that it stopped going well. So I was in the UK November last year. Yeah. Hang on. Yeah. So this is to be clear. This is all me. All right. Now I was over for a family celebration, which was lovely. We were going to the Tottenham Chelsea. So my brother, the infinitely more talented older brother of mine, who's in the UK, We were going to the game, but we had to go to a family personal appointment, and we were going to be late for the game. All right. I turned up to the stadium, literally walked in, 2-0 up, VAR review. Yeah. And everything after that went horribly tits up, as they would say. And so my family and friends who I've been going to see Tottenham with since I was a little boy, going in the old Division 2, all said to me, "Can you please expletive off back to Australia, because it's all gone horribly wrong again." Right?
And take your shit luck with you.
Take you, go now. And I did manage to sneak in the old Wolves game on that weekend, where I think we let in 2 goals in the last 5 minutes. So I did my work, my best work, went back to Australia. So where I stand on it is this: so the show that I do, the Grumpy Old Spurs show, I do it with 2 guys, Gibbo and Leon, who I would call the Ange Undertakers, or also Spurs call them Ange for some reason. I call them the Ange Undertakers because the really and truly the body is at the mortuary, and we're good to go. And obviously, with Grumpy Old Spurs, we are on. If you line up the spectrum of optimism and grumpiness and things like that, we are self-styled grumpy. And dare I say it, you and your fine show, we are kind of near enough bedfellows. I think you're slightly more optimistic than us, but
I don't know where you got that. I mean, my first question is where do the Spectrum brothers fit on the spectrum of Spurs podcasts?
Well, I mean, well, someone actually very, yeah, well, someone very cleverly said to me a couple of weeks ago when I talked about the YouTube podding world is kind of male dominated, and it'd be great, if we get more female voices, things like that. But the person said it to me, it was like, but it's like sending your husband to the shed in the olden days. You let them go to the shed, potter around, moan about their football team, and then they can come back in the house and everything's all right again. So this is kind of like the social media shed of supporting Tottenham, really.
I think you're right. We've been accused, I mean, of all sorts of things over the years, but we've been accused recently of providing a respite, a safe zone for people that are just bewildered and disillusioned with life. Because there's so much bloodletting going on that traditionally you'd go and, I mean, this is going back before the days of CCTV, dare I say, that a man would go to the football in order to return to his caveman roots, his DNA. So he would be allowed to swear, allowed to have a pint too many, allowed to drop litter, allowed to make misogynistic comments, all these disgusting things which are now toxic and we're not allowed to do anymore. Absolutely appalling.
No.
And now we're not even able to do that because we're sat there and there's no atmosphere and you don't feel like drinking. You're thinking, well, actually, I could probably still drive home, blah, blah. And the football isn't doing its job. And if you're publishing online, I mean, I think YouTube is a little bit of a beacon in the storm, where things are quite sort of calm and you can get plenty of action and activity with your audience. But if you're publishing online, as I do, you're not even getting any bloody clicks to pay the bills. So football has stopped feeding us. It stopped giving us the shed thing where we can go and potter about and tinker and, I was looking for a screwdriver like that, and all that sort of side of things. That's all kind of gone. You go to the shed and it's just full of empty old biscuit tins. There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there, and there aren't even any spiders. There's nothing. The shed has kind of lost its charm.
Yes.
But so, like I said, but the YouTube is a welcome relief from that because I think most people, our demographic is, I looked the other day for the first time and we've got virtually nobody under the age of 25. Now, that's not me trying to start a fight with youngsters, but the reality is there's an awful lot of people who don't understand football out there. And a lot of them also in the Venn diagram, see what I did there, but the Venn diagram, an awful lot of the people that don't understand football are quite young. And also, we've had a problem, like you might say, we've got a problem with rats or a problem with mice or something. We've got a problem with Australians that have seen our current illustrious leader work wonders in your part of the world and in another part of the world that a lot of people, I'm putting words into a third party's mouth here, don't have a lot of time for, Scotland.
Yes.
and are suggesting that all will come good in time. And why don't you just back him? And I think he's had quite a lot of money. I don't think the people above him are particularly intelligent, which doesn't help the situation. But I just see that there's a cuckoo in the nest as far as Spurs are concerned. So
But if we want to go, just to go back to answering it, right? So let's
yeah,
let's go back 2 years ago, right?
yeah,
Okay, so let's go bring the context here, right? So we'd finished the season thoroughly enjoying the rendition of "Fool's Gold" by Stone Roses, blaring out at the end of every game. Now I love my Stone Roses, but I don't
right,
need to hear him blaring out at the so drowning out the boos and all that kind of. Davison Sanchez in tears on the side of the pitch.
yeah,
Our captain Romero's disappeared because he's injured again,
of
and
course.
Nagelsmann on his skateboard into the training ground to turn us down. We didn't do the deal for Slot. Lucky that didn't work out really.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I think we dodged a bullet there. I mean, he's got no hair,
yeah,
no hair.
yep,
So
yep.
Andrew's got hair coming out of every single pore on his body.
And he's
So we're
Dutch,
ahead.
and
We're ahead on that front.
yeah, and he's Dutch, and we've never had a decent Dutch manager who's revived the fortunes of a moribund club like ourselves. I can't think of anyone at all.
No, no, no.
No one. Luckily, I think even Potter said he didn't want to work with Daniel Levy, but he did want to work with Todd Bowley. But who cares about that? So let's go context here. There was no one else, right? And so I think trying to climb into the mind of Daniel Levy, like the film Inception, right? Trying to climb into his dream state. He decided.
My first thought there, sorry, was of Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Yes, yeah, well, that's true.
With a
So
drip,
just
drip, if I was climbing into Daniel's mind, there would be a drip of sweat falling off the edge of my glasses.
yes, that's right. So let's climb into that mind of Daniel Levy, and he says to himself, "Okay, number one, I want to do data or data. So it's a different data where you are or data where you are, and it's data where we are, right?
It
So
depends
we
how
get
bad your US accent is, I think.
Well, that's right. So obviously those behemoths, the footballing giants of Brentford and Brighton, we're going to copy them. So that's number one, right? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to copy the City Group. I'm going to hire Scott Munn, who's been employed by the City Group, some other person who's like the data or the technical guy. He's in, and then through that we're going to get Ange in because he knows Munn, I think. So Ange arrives. Now the thing about Aussies, and obviously one of the many reasons why I love living here, is that for better or for worse, we bite back. We don't hide. If someone comes at you, we're going to have a bit of banter and have a go at each other. And
Right.
he had an example of that with him about Wenger in the last press conference, which I thought was highly entertaining, right? So he comes in, the club's in disarray. We had three managers, if you remember, Stellini, Mason, Conte. Paratici, and we're all wearing our Paratici branded
Yeah,
headphone things here.
thanks for sticking these in the post, by the way. I put
No
them
problem.
on in your honour because these are outdated pieces of junk that I got from a reputable audio supplier. I thought,
Good.
thank goodness the boys have sent me over the right kit.
Well, that's right. And if we get through, we're going to do a live show from a porta cabin in the stadium car park in Bilbao to our loyal 15 viewers. So we'll be handing them out there. So let's not forget there was no one else. So in he comes. The clubs and Aussies have got a sporting culture in Australia is really part of the national identity. Okay, it really is.
Right.
So I wasn't surprised that he came in and he did bring the feel good factor. He gets the club united together and off we go, right? And so
100%.
so last season we ended up fifth. We were out the cups early. His first big mistake was changing the team from Fulham away in the League Cup because we only had two bloody trophies to go for, so that was a mistake. And so we get to the end of the season. We had the first fabled last season. When we get all our players back, all will be well. And if you remember, no, it wasn't. So we got fifth, done. Now, I didn't want to. Now, there were rumblings at the time. And the Ange Undertakers, they were rumbling, but a little bit of rumbling in the chat group and this, that, and the other. But I did not want to start the sixth season running with a new coach. Yeah. So we started and I don't have a coaching badge. I don't know if you do or not, but I'm led to believe that if you play in Europe, you've got more games than a season that you don't play in Europe. I don't know if you've heard that rumor.
Yeah, I don't have a coaching badge, but I have seen close-up photographs of Carol Vorderman, so I can guarantee what you're saying there mathematically is correct.
Excellent, excellent. And so, with that concept in mind, where we get to fifth and we've knocked out the cups early, what we've done is we've got a weaker squad and we're playing more games. Now, you may not see on the background, I don't have signed pictures of Emerson Royale, Oliver Skipp, or Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I'm sorry about that. Nor Harry Kane's replacement, Valise. So it would have been last season. So we bring in Bergvall and Great. Now, our good friend, the Polar-necked jazz impresario from Aston Villa that we got in, he said in his end of window address, of course, he said they're ready to go, fit for the first team. Now, our avuncular Australian coach didn't start using them until we had a massive injury crisis. So we've got a weaker squad. I don't remember you saying on YouTube last summer that, you know what we need? We need Burnley's winger who's just been relegated and let's spend 30 million. Did you say that? I don't remember.
No, and what I would add there as well is you say there about the Australian connection, if you like. So not only did we have these new to this Premier League thing, which I'm not crazy about the Premier League. I think it's not as good as it used to be. Sometimes it's always but the real problem is not necessarily these particular individuals, although I don't rate them, but then I would say that anyway. But the fact that no matter what you give Daniel, he interferes in. And his character, now I'm not a stalker, but I've been working online for 20 odd years. And I can tell you he is one of life's massive little men. And one of his fragrances, you weren't expecting that, were you? He is the Mr. Don't underestimate me. Now, anybody who walks into a room and says, don't underestimate me, that's their opening gambit, has immediately got a chip on their shoulder, immediately got the Napoleon complex. And so I was quite willing to give everybody a go. And you described pretty much on point there what happened, what led us to precipitated to get us to this situation.
Yeah.
And so if we look at those 10 good games, just sort of briefly, would you disagree with me? And would you use what is not a phrase I invented, and it's not a phrase that came out last week? Would you say that they could be described, those 10 games, as a new manager bounce?
And also the fact that no one knew how to play against us for the first 10 games.
Ta-da! So it was all down to the management style, which we've since discovered was masterminded by a chimpanzee with a saucepan stuck on his forehead. They then worked out that if you just pushed the saucepan down a bit, the monkey couldn't even see anything and wasn't very bright, and you could beat us. So those 10 good games were the what they call the days in which hay was made.
Yes.
Because we all saw it, and we saw. I mean, one of the things I because obviously I've got no coaching badges, but I've watched a lot of football, perhaps as yourself, is that we saw a game that was inherently like five-a-side football. So the ball didn't really travel above here. Right? The ball stayed on the floor. There were lots of short passes and very few long passes, and it was all backed up with the statistics. So we were suddenly racking up like. Let's be realistic. Say a normal Premier League game might be 300 passes, 300, 400 passes.
Yeah.
We were hitting up to 600, 700 passes on some occasions. So it was very identifiable what Ange was up to. It wasn't complex. It wasn't a riddle. But so we had this kind of five-a-side thing. We weren't scoring goals from headers particularly often. The ball was on the floor. It was all ping pong, ding dong, ding dong, and you could see that there was this Tora press. And since then, the Tora press is like that Tora moment in the Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm, where the guy says, "Oh, my dad was at Pearl Harbor. He's working in the kitchen of this Vietnamese or Chinese restaurant, Japanese restaurant even." And the guy says, "He was at Pearl Harbor." And he goes, yeah, because his plane came there and just sort of skimmed off the side of an aircraft carrier and went into the sea. So he said, so he was a suicide bomber that didn't really, which is nice. It's nice. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But
Yeah.
it's a bit of a, and so we're now left with a version of Ange ball, which I think against Bodo Glimt, whoever they are, and against West Ham, where we struggled to get about 3,500 passes. So
this isn't Ange ball.
No, we're way off of that. And the Tora stuff is still there, but again, all of the pilots are just skimming off the side of the aircraft carrier and going into the water. There's no big, and the trouble is they're not dying, but they are pulling the hamstring or getting a twisty knee or whatever it is. And so
or they're Romero, who's looking at his international fixture list and going, I'm not up for that one. I'll be back soon. But can I also remind you back to those halcyon days also?
Yes.
So I am contractually to mention the name Perisic, right? So Perisic came up. So in that, what I was surprised about the first 10 games is that I was expecting Ange ball to be like Bazball in the cricket, just like, Nathan Lyon's gone off injured. We've got our great opportunity. We're getting bounced by the Aussies 6 over, but we're still going to try and hit it and get out. But in those games, there was like some semblance of match control by the fact he brings on our friend Højbjerg. He brings on Perisic with the experience. He had Manor Solomon knocking around. And so at that point in time, he did have good options off the bench, right? And so that part I was surprised about, that he was controlling the game by bringing on your Højbjerg and Perisic. And then, of course, let's not forget in those first 10 games, that, I'll never forget this, is that when we were beating the mighty Burnley 5-2 away, and the Spurs fans sang, "We've got our Tottenham back." And then the camera panned to our glorious leader. And somewhere halfway around the world, a man sitting in darkness on the couch over there went, "Fucking hell, he's got his get out clause now." And lo and behold, the fans forum takes place for the first time, hastily arranged for the first time in 6 years. And then he goes, "Simple, we've got our Tottenham back." Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, the trouble is, like this is it. You've set it up and you've hit it out, for a four. I mean, the deal with Daniel Levy is, are you underestimating me, aren't you? We've got our top the back, and because this is the guy who hired in no particular order, Mourinho, Conte,
Nuno.
The other guy from Wolves who beat,
Nuno.
He's now Nottingham Forest. Nuno, who all play the same game. They all play the same tactical same game, which again, the kids that don't understand football couldn't work out. And all they were saying was, well, Nuno seems nice, but he's a bit clueless. Conte exploded live on TV. I don't know what his problem is. And Mourinho, well, he's just very arrogant. And the trouble is, you've got two of those guys who've got insane CVs. And you've got this third guy who's really showing that, given a bit of following wind and all the rest of it, his heart is in the right place, and he may well end up with a good CV himself. But we've got this guy who's aided us getting our Tottenham back, and boy, the usual Daniel Levy Duff Prophecy Company Trading Inc. comes to fruition. What have you got for your birthday, Jimmy? It's an empty fucking box. It's an empty box. There's nothing. Is this a joke? Oh, is the box made of gold? Is the box a Louis Vuitton box? Is that what? I get it. No, you've got your Tottenham back. Because I went out and I bought the cheapest manager that was available. In fact, he wasn't even on the shelves in the cheap manager shop. He was out the back rooting through some, recycling cardboard. That's why I got this. That's why I got this guy for. So what do you think? Postecoglou. I've watched him deteriorate. Because I did like that thing that you said about the Aussies. You'll have a snap back, and I kind of respect that, because each culture. I've moved around, lived in a lot of different places, and cultures to have those little twists and turns to them, which is interesting. It's nice, and I'm not being remotely patronising at all.
Or woke.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I do. Like in English, but I do like that, and I think that it can be disruptive and entertaining.
Yeah.
But the press conference before tonight's game, the second leg at Postecoglou, he was asked about the artificial pitch, and he's lost twice against this lot, or once or twice, I can't remember, against them on this pitch.
Yeah.
And he didn't train on an artificial pitch beforehand, and he lost at was it Tamworth or whoever it was?
No, we didn't lose. We nearly lost.
We tired. A white towel was hurled in from one of the stands from a freelance referee. But he was asked specifically about this, and the press guy, and this is what I've always said: you can ask awkward questions and still sound polite. It doesn't mean you're being horrible or nasty, you know. And the guy said, "Could it be the case that you've learnt?" Because one of the first jobs I ever had, I had to crowbar this in, was that they told me I got the job, after I'd sort of done a few hours on the shop floor. And the guy said, "No, what you've got," he said, "is invaluable. You've got a willingness to learn." And I thought, at the age of 19, I knew everything. I thought I knew everything. I slept with girls. I could hold my drink. I really didn't feel there was much to learn. I really didn't feel there was much.
You were listening to Fool's Gold by the Stone Roses, not realising it was going to come back in your life about 20 odd years later.
Come back and bite me in the bottom.
Yeah.
But the willingness to learn. So when I was given this opportunity, this childlike, simplistic opportunity, handed this gift to say, yes, I have a huge willingness and capacity to learn, he said, no, it's given a set of circumstances, mate. No, it isn't. In actual fact, this is actually the same team playing on the same bit of turf that you lost at before. He can't accept or take any responsibility for anything. We've heard it all. It was the weather. It was the pitch. It was the home crowd against Liverpool, who are champions. Whether you think they deserve to be or not, they are champions. Yeah. They earn the right. They get the parade, the Guard of Honour. They're champions. Yeah, well, their crowd got quite lively after they'd equalised. Mate, what did you expect? It was Anfield.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the thing is that I'll put a little bit of a defence in here, right?
I was trying to antagonise you.
No, I'm all right. As I said, I've had this is a gin and tonic. It's going down nicely. It's all relaxed. So, a couple of things there. One is he was huge. Look, when we appointed him, sections of our fan base and online, there was an element of inverted snobbery that we've appointed an Australian who's been in Celtic, Japan, and Australia. Well, I hate to say it, at that time, we hadn't qualified for Europe for the first time in about 6 or 7 years, and we had that god-awful season. A season, by the way, in the reporting period that Daniel paid himself a $3+ million bonus, but we'll park that for another time, yeah? So that's that one. So the inverted snobbery of we are the mighty Tottenham, who we're not playing in Europe next season. But we've hired this Australian shock horror. And then the press, the English press in particular, very patronising. The Robbie Williams, the Fonz, all this. Do you know the history of the club? Blah blah bloody blah. He does. And then people throw in his face sometime the infamous interview on Australian television with the great sporting doyen Craig Foster. You must remember Craig Foster.
I do. He was. If I recall correctly, he was a bane of my life at one point. I have to just chip in with this because if I've got a little bit of angst, it helps to let it out. He was the big face behind those Predator football boots.
No. Sorry,
wasn't
Craig? That's Craig Johnson.
Okay, I don't care. I'm angry. I was angry when I was 15. I was angry when I was 15, and I refuse to calm down now.
And just to be clear, it's not Craig McLaughlin from Home and Away and all that. There's 3 Aussie Craigs for you for the price of 1. All right. So Craig Foster.
My apologies.
That's okay. Craig Foster, who I would say is I liken him to Gary Lineker, and believe you me, not in a positive way. Okay.
Right.
So Ange losing his rag with Craig Foster is fine by me many years ago. So, but let's be realistic here. So, as I said, my co-hosts on Lads of Tottenham, Grumpy Old Spurs, the Ange Undertaker, the body's at the morgue, right?
Yeah.
Whether we win this tournament of a second-tier European football tournament, which frankly is the level that we are at, okay? If if we win it and qualify the Champions League, we'd all be delighted. We'd all be happy, right? Except for Arsene Wenger, Alex Crook, and Andy Gray and Richie Keys. Oh well. But we qualify, and then what I would think Daniel Levy makes a decent decision, and he walks away, hopefully with the compensation that he deserves, like every other Tottenham manager. And my vision for Ange now, and I'm winding up a friend of mine who is a QPR fan, and I believe that they've got a manager, sounds like Victor Cifuentes from LA Law or something like that. I think he's on gardening leave because West Brom are going to nab him. So I see Ange will go to QPR. Now, why will Ange go to QPR? Because, as you know, the big Aussie drinking community around Shepherd's Bush, he'll feel right at home there.
Oh, okay. Because he was talking about it perhaps not being, his security might be compromised if he went for a drink with supporters when they won.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So he'll go. I think there's a walkabout bar or something like that in Shepherd's Bush, something like that. He can go to that, hang out with Aussies. I'm hoping that he'll take Yves Bissouma with him, whether it's on a loan or options for a loan or just go. Yves, he can go there, and maybe he'll
kill Bissouma.
Yeah, that's right. He can take Brennan Johnson and maybe hopefully that he can get Timo Werner on another 165,000 grand a week loan deal as well.
I've got a feeling Timo Werner's time on Planet Football is almost up. I've got a feeling his career may be closer to the end than it is the beginning.
Well, I do think it's good that we've played a part in extending his career, don't you?
Just extraordinary. I mean, the joke. I mean, one of the guys on my thing made the joke on the last thing because we deranged. We were talking about dignitas and stuff like that, end of life care. And made the point that if you got a cheaper version of Dignitas, then the doctor could be Doctor Timo, and you could end up with just being sort of like numb down one side because he like missed with the jab or didn't give you the right pill or whatever. So what do you? So we've got these 10 games, right? There was a smattering of draw. I do agree with your patronising nature of the press, and I think it's very typical of the English press. All I will say on that very briefly is the way it's gone. It started about 10 years ago, probably about it, where they just fired everybody because the internet had taken over.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to pay the same guys the big mega bucks they were on because they were selling newspapers, blah, blah, advertising model changed, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So and it's the same with the newsrooms. The newsrooms now are full of children. So
are we getting older?
Well, I don't know. The policemen are younger. That's all I can tell you. But the reality is that they're now kids. I mean, I don't remember as a kid there would be, and now we're going over to whoever it was on News at 10, and there being a 25-year-old man reading the news.
Right.
I mean, maybe everybody was dressed so they were prematurely aging themselves before they went on. But those people are now the age of our grandparents. So they must have been older than us when they were on the telly. But they're just children operating it across the media. And you do get this thing with a big London club, and as I say constantly, TV companies, we know for a fact, Capcom, who owns Sky, have been hemorrhaging viewers across the continent of Europe. So everybody's just trying to sell a subscription. I nearly said prescription there, but no, everybody's trying to sell a subscription. And there is this dishonesty. And you say about where Spurs are, and I can't get over this business of, I tell you where we are, we're 16th.
Yeah.
We're in total and absolute free fall. And the only reason that we haven't free fell into the championship is because there are 3 teams that are even worse than us.
Yeah.
And I mean, when Leeds come up, when so-and-so come up, it'll be fascinating to see where, because the natural pecking order will kick in and we'll have got rid of some absolute dross. But it'll be interesting to see where Spurs stand. They have to get rid of Ange, or it's like any doctor will tell you: if you keep eating the same foods, your current condition will carry on. If you're talking about, so where do you? I mean, QPR is a curveball. It hadn't occurred to me at all. I can see him wandering around Earl's Court with the hat with the corks on in his undercover mode and stopping and autographing people's newborn children. I think that could be a
Who are called Craig. The babies are
yeah,
called
yeah, yeah.
Craig.
Just to fuck around with my brain. This is
Yeah.
Craig, not that bastard. But so I was told by a very good source of mine. I know it's cheesy, but it's absolutely true.
ITK, we're talking.
Proper ITK in the know for those of you at home. But Daniel is close to pulling the trigger. He's in the middle of dealing with a non-Middle Eastern entity.
Sorry, which trigger is it? Sorry, just to be clear, but when you're saying close to pulling the trigger on Ange, the trigger on himself, or the trigger on Enoch? Can we just be clear on your trigger?
The entire bucket of triggers. No hanging on in a managerial advisory nursemaid capacity. No, it's about engineering Enoch's removal from the football game.
Are they? I mean, if that's the case, the champagne will be out here. Let me tell you.
I mean, yeah, 100%.
Let me ask you a question. What was your turning point for you to say, I want Levy and Enoch gone? What was your point? What was your this is my last straw?
Okay, I can be very precise with that. I can't give you a time or
I don't need an exact time. You were with Craig. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. We were wrestling as we normally do at that time of the morning. But no, the exact moment was when, because I got a very uneasy feeling because like I say, I slept with a couple of girls. I could take my drink. I was a degenerate, in other words.
Right. Yeah.
But so I thought I knew it all, and then I
Yeah.
saw the plan for the stadium, and the first alarm bell went off with the airbrushed images of what were people from shopping centre airbrushed images that I've seen.
Right.
I'd worked in retail and I'd been in the manager's office where they've got a 3D model of the shopping centre, and it had these nondescript people in chinos carrying carrier bags. They were all having a little bit of something to eat, and then they got their park and ride bus and they went home.
Yeah.
So, and I thought they have in their mind the same people that are using my local shopping centre. I don't see scarves. I don't see blokes with shaved heads, flat faces, big coats. I don't see any of that stuff at all. And lo and behold, so that kind of came to fruition. And then when they started doing stuff, first of all, I found the updates on the build itself a distinctly strange kind of pornography, where people were just getting very aroused by girders raising and by trucks sliding in.
Michael Dawson dressed in with his yellow jacket and his helmet
and nothing underneath it but a see-through negligee. And then they did something which I don't know, maybe I'm touching at things here, but then I discovered that they were executing foxes who had been living there for longer than these bastards have been living there. Then I discovered
we're not talking Rule Fox and his family here. Just
no. Rule was given an exemption and rehomed.
Okay, good.
But they were humanely, because I'm waiting for the day that I get a knock at the door and somebody says we've come to humanely kill you, and I think, oh, thank God for that. It's not just a general killing where there's like bits of me blown up everywhere. It's a humane way of getting rid of me, so that's great. So they were humanely killing foxes, which is beggars belief. That's like when I see a Royal Society of Protection of Birds sticker on a dead chicken in a supermarket. I'm not a vegan, by the way, but I can see when things aren't right. So that's the other thing. And then because of the way the situation unfolded, so we had all these guys telling us, oh yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. People started to talk, and you've got an uncontrollable workforce of temporary people. So suddenly we got to hear about what was going on inside, and not just like inside the corridors and when they were drilling and digging and blah, 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 but we got to hear about the compulsory purchase orders. And we got to hear about the knock at the door and go, good afternoon, madam. We're from Tottenham HOTSPUR Football Club. You don't live here anymore. That put a shudder through my veins because I grew up, like I say, a degenerate. I grew up knowing that in life, things like the police, the hospitals, blah, 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 the guys that take away our refuse, they're important parts of a society.
Yeah.
Having more real estate from which to sell vegan enchiladas was never really mentioned on the same level as like, now, mate, you have to move the hospital out the way because we need to put in a funfair wheel for the big opening,
Yeah.
So that worried me. And then there was more information came out And I was being told that basically that Daniel and his wife were wandering around. Now, I don't know how qualified she is. Apparently, you can be very qualified just by watching makeover shows on TV. That's what I've been told. You don't need to have been to a design school or worked in business.
I've been told she's a massive fanatic Tottenham fan.
Yeah,
I have been told
I'm sure she is. I've also been told that she's a massive fanatic about shades of paint and positioning of uplighters and downlighters. And they went around redoing shit that had been long since done. So pull it out. She doesn't
Are you
like it.
saying the stadium build went over budget? Is that what you're? No, you must be
Yeah,
joking.
and I'm also telling you in breaking news that Daniel decided it wasn't just good enough having his hot, deranged wife wandering around interfering. He'd bring in his strange-looking, deranged son,
The
and the
one with the
son.
massive forehead.
I couldn't comment either way. I've got a terrible forehead. I don't want to throw stones.
You remember the Mekons?
Well, I remember the Tefal lads for the Irons.
Yeah.
So the son comes in and was given clear and precise instruction on a deal to do with the wiring for the electric bits and things that for when people had to escape. So we're talking about post 9/11.
Yeah.
So that when the power went because
Yeah.
something awful happened, because we're talking
Yeah.
about like a post-terrorist activity.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm being a bit mumbly about it, because I'm not an electrician, I'm not qualified. But I do know he was given really simple instruction. And of course, being his father's son, and perhaps guided by his father's hand, he went off piste and decided to find his own setup, his own system. The Americans made it quite clear, just by the system that we use in all of our NFL stadiums, because we are very aware of the.
Is this the son that's the CEO or the chair of the Tavistock Group now?
God knows.
I think he is. I mean, he is, and he's worked hard to get to that position.
Oh, he's worked very hard, very hard.
Very
I mean,
hard.
there are people holding senior rank in the SAS who haven't worked as hard as this kid. I mean, this is a level of nepotism as yet unseen, even by Liam Gallagher's children. You know, this is.
Well, hang on a minute. You're slagging off Australia, now you're slagging off Oasis. There's a step too far.
Well,
sir.
I would have deported them as well. That's the reality. So that's probably why you're picking up that vibe.
Wow.
So he goes out and he buys this system.
Yeah.
Which he should have not bought, and tells everybody that he got like a 10-year guarantee and he got a free sticker rock and a pair of those like 3D cinema glasses and all the rest. He got loads of stuff in the bag with it. And then they discovered that it didn't tick the boxes that the NFL wanted. It didn't tick the boxes that the stuff. You know, when you build something, it's got to be proficient. It's got to be, you know,
it's got
up
to work.
to standard.
You mean?
It's got to work. Oh, sorry, that's it. The troublesome, meddlesome phrase. It's got to function properly because people are coming in and they have to be safe. It's a public place. All that craziness that and they had to rip it out. And we were told, oh, it was a fire panel. No, it wasn't a fire panel. This is like saying the building is going to be shut down because somebody spilled a coffee.
Yeah.
When's it opening up again? Oh, very soon, few months. And you're saying there was a cup of coffee spill. Well, what did the coffee land on? Oh, just a cup of carpet tiles. They're 30 quid each. But we're going to be shut for a few months. So they ripped it all out. And that's why the huge delay was there, because they lied to us. They barefaced lied.
The club have lied to us. What?
Yeah. There's a written version of this, and it's about 20 words long. They lied. And so the stadium went way over budget. We had to port ourselves at Wembley for longer. Blah 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 blah. It's all part of the ancient history. But the reality is, on my argument, and I spoke to the guys at Archway Steel, so anything I say is completely just my own opinion because they're not allowed.
The Archway Steel that burnt down, that one.
Yeah, you know that really flammable steelworks.
Yeah.
That used to be where the centre circle is now.
Yeah.
Those nasty, and we need to factor in here as well. We're a very woke club. We're very aware of our carbon footprint, how we respond to others, get their pronouns right. We give free advertising space.
Race to zero.
They well, first of all, they were Cypriot, and we all know you can never trust a Cypriot because they're horrible people. Second of all, they're a local business, been there for generations, and they were Tottenham Hotspur season tickets. All the signals were there for a sane person to realise they were up to no good. Cypriot. Tottenham fans, hard-working, tax-paying businessmen. You
Yeah.
have to be a fool to trust them.
Mm.
So,
Now, can I ask you a question here?
yeah,
At the end of this project, I heard a rumor that Daniel was paid a bonus of 3.5 million for bringing in a building project that was delayed and massively
and
over budget. Have you heard that rumor?
I heard that rumor, and I likened Daniel to, like I say, because my only understanding of interior design is from watching those daytime TV programs where they make over a home.
You
And
look the type.
yeah, well, you could just see it. You can just smell it's coming off me. You can smell it. It's
But
radiating.
look at your tone there. I mean, it looks beautiful.
There's always that one punter who they say, what would you like us to do? And I say, well, I want a loft conversion.
Yeah,
And they'll say, right, it won't add anything to the house.
yeah.
It'll extend the life of the build by 6 months or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And you'd be much better off putting in a downstairs bathroom because these are really, and any leftover money's fine. And the guy says, the woman says, whatever, no, I've decided. And that was Daniel. Daniel had decided. He decided that he was going to let his wife loose. He decided he was
Mm.
going to let his son loose. And he
Yeah.
also decided that he was going to be the project manager.
Yeah.
This is the guy who also project managed the naming rights, which is yet to be completed. And they
Well,
put
he has
Todd
got
Clyde in.
he's got a land management degree from Cambridge University. You do know
Exactly.
that.
I mean, I am, as I say, being a degenerate, I was just kind of overlooking this enormous, weighty piece of information. But he had took the thing in house. He produced a book, a hardback book, which he sent out to blue chip companies, telling them how they ought to be involved in the stadium, and they all threw it in the bin. Nobody came back to him. Nobody came back to
Now, can I just respond to a few things if you don't mind? Now, we were talking in the green room whilst we were enjoying our canapes and sipping champagne. That if I look across the spectrum, and I use the word spectrum in a
him.
nice
Advisedly.
way of Tottenham YouTube and podcast. So, I've been a bit of a tart this week. I've been on the Spurs show this week. So if you're looking for good nights, yeah, I know. And that first time I was on it, Sherwood was in charge. Okay, so I'm that's when you could listen to it on what this thing called an iPod or something, right? So I've been on the Spurs show this week.
All right,
That I do.
slags.
I know. I've been on. We do Lads of Tottenham, Grumpy Old Spurs, which used to be the cheese room. That's a whole other story. And then,
Oh, okay, that explains it. Yeah.
and yeah, that does explain it. And this fine enjoyment that hopefully people would enjoy listening to two grumpy people, and you are a bit grumpy, but what you've just described to me, and I asked you the question about 20 minutes ago, what was your turning point to eat it out? You waited to 2017, 2018. We're talking about that period. They started in 2000. So by
Yeah.
that, you are an Enoch lover and a happy clapper if you've waited that long.
Well, I wouldn't.
So
I would
go on.
first of all, I would redirect the court to look at my client's online published CV, where I was always quite pithy against the club, to put it mildly. I was
Yeah.
thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a calling card. I didn't think I'd have to leave. I was thrown off on the Spurs website. They have a News Now feed with
Yeah.
all the headlines going in.
Yeah.
Spurs threw me off that, and I think they threw me off
They threw
that.
you off it.
Yeah, because
Wow.
that was their core business at one point. News Now, which was great business, but they had this listing, and you could say to them that you wanted just information about oil or car manufacturing or
Right.
whatever it was. And
Yeah.
they'd got one, a bespoke one for them about Spurs. I was on it, and they threw me off. And I think I was already off that by the time they'd won the Carling Cup.
Well, yeah, but
So I must have published something which put the stick up at their bottom long
right.
before you're suggesting. But no, but for me, and also don't forget, I've said I'm a degenerate, but I might have been joking. I do believe that we are in the West, and that's a private business, and blah blah blah. So there was stuff I was calling out, but I didn't have the ache-on for them that the stadium brought with it, because the stadium for me showed their true colours.
Yeah.
The stadium said, we don't give a damn that you're a local business, blah, blah, blah. Just go. Here's a compulsory purchase order. They also used the leverage, which is a very Daniel thing to do, of the Tottenham riots to
Oh, yeah.
suggest that a football was going to bring the world together. But in actual fact, if you wanted another little gem from the archives, if you're not doing so well and you live in the Tottenham area, you could be subject to going in and out of a poor door. And do you know what a poor door is? Because I didn't know what it is. You move into a block, apartment, or whatever it is, but you don't get to come and go out the same door as access. You go out the door where the people from the social welfare side of things are.
Wow.
And that's in all of the bloody new developments they've done for residential housing in the area. All of it.
Wow.
So
Wow.
you don't have the use of the park. You don't have your bin is round the other side. You're kept away. Technically, you're in the
So
same
that is
domicile.
what's known as the social housing that they've built.
Yeah, yeah. And it's called a pour door. And I've got a guy that I've been in touch with for a number of years. Again, this was just on the build up to when they were taking over, doing the
Right.
monopoly board thing in N17, and they were wandering around
Right.
buying up stuff. And he said, "You know what they're going to do." And I've listened to the guy speak on housing platforms. He's a local councillor and activist. And I
Wow.
never thought I would be mentioning somebody who's an activist and endorsing them and being an advocate for their work. But that's the way ENIC operates.
Well, you
That's
have
the
to
way ENIC
realise this.
operates.
So, as you know, we've got no statues whatsoever, and we've kind of been sports washed the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
So, I think that the person who's helped build the stadium really is whoever the off duty or the undercover police officer who shot the alleged drug dealer who's getting out the minicab that started the Tottenham riots. Because at that point in time, we had lost to West Ham. West Ham had won the bid. And if you may remember, and it's reported in the news, that two consultants that we hired were found guilty of spying on members of the committee and potentially Karen Brady. And to be clear for all the lawyers, I know you have an army of barristers on standby. To be clear, it was said in the reports in the court that they were acting outside the instructions of the club.
yeah,
So that's to be clear. But why did we hire these people in the first place? So let's just leave that one at there, right? So
yeah,
the stadium in itself, he wanted to go to Stratford. He didn't
yeah,
get to go to Stratford. So we were there. There was a period of time between it was refused and West Ham got it. There was a period of time between that and when the police officer fired at the alleged drug dealer and off we went, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I'll go back to here's a couple of things, and I don't know how much longer you want to go for. So
No, we're
I
good.
was, listen, let's be clear. I was no fan of Alan Sugar, right?
Sure.
No
No,
fan
who
at
was?
all.
Who
And
was?
I was
Yeah, yeah.
dancing on I was actually over here for the first time when he, no, I was actually back in the UK. So when he left, I think the Birmingham 3-0 League Cup defeat saw the end of him as his roller was chased down the high road. And that was the end of that one, right? So he was
The
gone.
sugar monster.
That's correct. And I always thought, I think with Sugar now, that if you close your eyes and listen to him talk, I think he sounds like Zippy from Rainbow. But that now with Sugar gone, we bring in this lot who own all these football clubs in Europe, and we go, right, here we go, great. And then I take you, Your Honour, to the quarter-final of the FA Cup, West Ham away. We win 3-2. The locals were keen to share with us and the away end their coin collection, which was very generous of them, as it rained down from above. And we drove away from the ground happy that we'd won. Probably Sergei Rebrov's finest performance in a Spurs shirt.
Yeah,
And we all said, we as a fan base will have to accept the man in the raincoat if we beat Arsenal in the semi-final of the FA Cup. Because he's won the League Cup 2 years before. None of us really wanted him there. I get that. But we never got to find out, did we? Because he got sacked because apparently he was leaking to the press that the new owners weren't going to spend much money on players. Surprise, surprise. And out the door he went. And then we see Glenn Hoddle turn up 5 minutes. So a bit of a seed of doubt to start with. That's an odd move. I take you to the Berbatov Fraser Campbell fantastic swap window. Yeah.
with Berbatov with a tartan blanket over him. That was what I
Yes.
was told. He had a tartan
Yes.
rug like your granny would have when she's at the
Yes.
seaside, thrown over the Bulgarian. Beautiful.
Yes. So we
Beautiful.
paid some money to City for Chorluka. We agreed to accept their bid for Berbatov, and he goes to United, right? But we got Fraser Campbell. Now, at that point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I was near the end of my tether, all right? We'd gone through the Santini's 6 months. We'd been through the new project of Arneson, Santini, and all that lot. And then we get the
Arneson, of course, don't forget, who was one of these guys that was really good at going to the newsagents, buying one of every newspaper, flipping them over, and then seeing who was doing the rounds on the transfer market, and then jotting down the names and sliding it under the Daniel Levy's door, like the what's his name, Mike Bassett, football manager, on his wish list. No, and the other one I was going to mention as well, when we talk about the character of England and the way it displays itself, was the business when we were still at White Hart Lane, and they cordially invited. That's a good word for stepping around legal landmines. They cordially invited the Metropolitan Police in, who arrested the life out of a number of people for singing Yid Army and versions and variants thereof, which, as we all know, is done as an attack on Jews. It's the only thing we've got left to wipe out, us pro-anti-Semites. It's the only thing we've got is to make them, lure them in to an environment where they feel they're part of some fraternal warmth. Because that's what you do, because Jewish people are stupid, so we get them in.
I'm Jewish, so I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, this is good.
We get them in, these absolute schmucks. We get them in, and then we say, and they don't realise that this is a call to attack them. This is a civil defence thing.
Even when you get Jewish fans like me singing Yid Army.
Exactly, that's the beauty of it, that you even get sucked in. You're so stupid. But anyway, what happens is we call the cops in. The cops are running around shouting "Book 'em, Dano" and all this business. These guys get threatened, arrested, carted off to Clink, a night in the cells, released, told they're on bail, told that they're going to be up before the beak and they're going down and they're going to prison. And the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, said nobody's broken the law. And this was all, again, part of the whitewashing. All part of, they get rid of the guys with the shaved heads, the flat noses and the big coats. We don't want them. We want Mr. and Mrs. 2.35 children coming through the door with carrier bags full of Korean flavoured snacks and all the rest of it. And that's, so this, I mean, that was before we left LA. I mean, the way they've conducted themselves has been, if I could sum one English language so rich and full, but I think horrid is how I would describe it.
Well, they are, but I'll finish off. So I've given you, I still think you're an inner because you waited until 2018 to decide you've had enough. So the Berbatov Fraser Campbell thing, some people in my life may not describe me as a patient person, but I think I showed quite a lot of patience at this complete inability to run a football club. So let's wind it forward to, Redknapp is sacked. And I didn't have a problem with that because everyone moans about how he was so, I hate this word, Spursy, because Chelsea won the Champions League. He had a 12-point gap in third place over Arsenal in fourth. So he screwed that up. Okay.
Yeah.
Now he screwed it up. So we sack Redknapp. We've got a shiny. Have you heard we built a new training ground? It's lovely. We've got this shiny.
I was under the impression that there was an additional non-related, semi-permeable technological counter investment. But I didn't realise it was for training. I thought you went there for foot rubs and hand jobs. I wasn't realise it was actually to do with the football itself. But that's what it is. It's a they train there, do they?
Yeah, and we last week at Grumpy Old Spurs we did Tree of the Week. It's a new feature that we did, and it's about that 500-year-old oak that, to be clear, was not cut down on the Tottenham land, but it was cut down on the adjoining land, which is owned by Toby Carvery, of which a big investor in Toby Carvery is. That's right. It's our good friends, the Tavistock Group, Enoch, right? So anyway,
Tavistock,
that's right.
Have such fun.
So my
Absolutely.
final straw was I'm living in Hong Kong at this point in time. All right.
Okay.
The pre-season friendly, they have the Barclays tournament, and Chelsea are playing. AVB's there, Chelsea's manager, and it's not very funny. And had a few beers, and I apologise. I was singing "You're just a shit student manager" because he's like 10 years old, right? Okay. The following summer, it's another tournament, and a very good friend of mine, his wife was there, and she said to me, "I'll never forget what you sang last year. It was so funny, about a shit student manager." And I said, "Yes, I know. He's now our manager." And that, when we hired Matthew Corbett from the Sooty Show, the man, AVB, who's a great
I don't want any transfers.
Yes. And, he never talked about the fact that Chelsea did the dirty on him, ever, did he? It was like a jilted lover. And when you're playing Sandro and Jake Livermore, as you're screening front two against the mighty West Bromwich Albion and Norwich at home, and wonder why we don't qualify for the Champions League that season because we blew the points then.
I think, in fairness, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just scratching around here. But wasn't Jake Livermore serving a community service order when he was at Spurs? Wasn't that the gig? He wasn't actually a footballer, was he? I think he's been involved in some criminal thing had gone. I don't know. I can't remember.
No, actually, he was a sponsor.
Sorry, I've got the lawyers on the line.
No, he was running a crypto fund that we'd partnered up with, so that's why he's in, right? So Livermore's in, and that would explain the career of Lewis Holtby as well. So for me, the final straw was AVB. All right, I looked at it as Daniel Levy, and you're old enough to remember Peter Swales, Doug Ellis, sacking all these managers, don't know anything about football, but he's very well rewarded, and to the point that. And what is often thrown my way and other people's way, because I've been ENIC out a long time, right? But I'm not ENIC out. I'm going to abuse everybody who doesn't agree with me and go onto other YouTube channels and go, "You're just an enabler. You're being paid by ENIC." We used to get out in the cheap room.
That tripped off your lips rather easily.
No, I know. So we used to do this. We were on the cheese room in the January transfer window. Surprise, we haven't bought anyone. And so a certain channel would send his minions over, and they just, you're just an enabler. You're in it, and I'm like going,
was that guy Greek by any chance?
It might sound like the name Hair Gel, something like that. Yeah. Who chucked the biggest lower lip wobbly when the change to Tottenham crew, who I've got a lot of respect for and a lot of time for, did not turn up on his channel. There was a miscommunication, things like that.
I knew exactly who you're talking about. I referred. It could be a couple of people, but I referred to one of them as a Greek toilet cleaner, which he threw an absolute fit. And over one of his numerous burner accounts on social media, started to try a wave of Harry Hotspur is a racist and a bigot and a homophobe. And everybody just said, "Yeah, we knew all that. Tell us something we don't know about it." But there's nothing wrong turning around and saying, because if the police said to you, who was it there? He said, "Well, there was a Greek toilet cleaner. He was cleaning the toilet and he looked Greek to me." In a nice way. I mean, it's not to do with Greeks cleaning toilets. It could have been a Polish toilet cleaner. Could have been an African toilet cleaner. Could have been
a Jewish toilet cleaner.
Could have been, it could have been anybody that happened to be cleaning a toilet. And I just saw it. I just called it as I saw it. But I understand he's helping the witness protection program fill out the spare seats at the moment. So listen,
I've just finished off. He sent his minions over because apparently the cheese room was pro ENIC and this, that, and the other, right? Frankly, and I hate to be old fashioned here, it's just you had people in the cheese room who had, are you ready for this? They had a different opinion to each other, so it made for a good conversation and chat. And I was again, we go back to the spectrum. I was on the very much of the spectrum of I'm ENIC out, I can't stand them. That was my shtick. And then I'm on the show, and then you get people going, "Why don't you talk about ENIC? Why you're just enablers and this, or you're being paid." My favourite was you're being paid by Joe Lewis. So I am talking to you tonight from Joe Lewis's yacht, the Viva. This is my cabin. Thanks a lot.
You're not playing. What was it? Racquetball. If you were really
I know
Joe Lewis, he wouldn't let you off the racquetball courts.
I know.
Listen, I've got a good idea because I get very nervous when we hit the hour mark on these things. I've really
Yeah,
enjoyed this. I think
sure.
this is a good point to invite you back to do another one of these because
Okay.
I think we've covered how we got here with Ange.
Mm.
And I'm glad we actually haven't wasted time talking too much about football because football's
Yes,
a bloody
who
disgust.
wants to do that? Who wants to do that? For God's
I mean,
sake.
you can get it over the road. You get
Yeah,
it over the road. We don't want to sell you a product you've already bought from somewhere else. So what we
yeah.
can do is we can regroup because this is quite nice, very organic because we didn't really plan this at all. It's more about just
No.
having a chat. So what we can do is because it isn't going to happen in the next couple of weeks, that's for sure, because everything's happening in slow motion with this lot. We can then do so we know how we got here and where do we go next. Because I
Yep.
think that's possibly might be of use to some people who are contemplating self harming and stuff like that at the moment.
Yes.
Watching this oath come out every week. So
Yep.
Davo or David
Yes.
from Grumpy Old Spurs, thank you very much for being a lovely guest
Pleasure.
and showing us around your part of the yacht. That's it for now, folks. Keep it tuned. Good luck. Speak to you soon. Keep it solid. And that's the end of that.